Good day, I am Niljan Floreta, and this video presentation is all about chapters 6 and 7, which are homicide investigation checklist and police investigative report writing under specialized criminal investigation 2 with simulation on interrogation and interview. So now let us begin breaking down the topics from chapter 6, which is homicide investigation checklist. So first, what is a checklist? Or what is a homicide investigation checklist? So first, homicide investigation checklist is a pre-written procedure to ensure consistency and completeness in carrying out the investigation. This promotes reduction or avoidance of committing mistakes during the investigation that may obliterate the investigation. The process serves as procedures in handling the investigation. So when a homicide case has taken place, upon the arrival at the crime scene, the things that the investigator, crime scene technician, or first responder must do are the following. Enter the scene by taking a path or route which is least likely to disturb evidence. This action maintains the crime scene as it is and avoids contamination on the scene. So yan ang iniiwasan kapag papasok na sa crime scene ang crime scene technician or ang investigator. They must take the path which there is less likely to disturb materials or items in the crime scene to avoid contamination or to avoid contaminating items that are of potential evidence. So next, check the victim for signs of life such as pulse, heartbeat, and breathing. This is done to identify whether the victim on the scene is alive or not and to instantly provide medical assistance towards him or her. And lastly, note the time of arrival. So for me, as I critique this first slide of the checklist, upon my assessment, first, upon the arrival of the scene, then you must note the time of your arrival before entering the crime scene. Next is the process of removing the body of the victim from the scene. Before taking the body of the victim out of the crime scene, the body must be photographed. And if circumstances allow, before taking the victim's body out of the scene, carefully take note of the victim's position, or whether the victim is lying on his left side or right side, or the victim was lying on a chair. You must carefully take note only if circumstances and time will allow it. So dapat mapicturean sa ang body sa victim in the crime scene before taking out of the scene. Kay pag nagdali na tas dili maka-take note sa position, then the picture may be used as a reference for note taking and investigation. So that's the importance of the photograph. Next is acquire physical evidence from the victim. So when the victim's body is out of the scene, then assuming that it is placed in an ambulance or any vehicle, then the police officer must escort the victim, and while traveling to the hospital, the police officer must collect victim's clothing and personal effects, mga items that the victim carries together with him or her. Those are the personal effects as they come available, because these items may hold evidence that can help the investigation. So na mga potential evidence dara na ato ang magather sa clothing or mga possession sa victim. While collecting these items, the police officer must note the time received and the identity of the person from whom the items were received. So again, every detail no must be taken into account because uh, this is done to avoid confusion and mamix ang imuhang mga nagather na items from different persons and from different areas. And also, indication of time is very important, no? It is always very important that you indicate the time during investigation. Next, whoever has handled these items shall be listed to identify the chain of custody of these items. A failure to follow up on collecting objects that left the crime scene with the victim may cause their loss or render them useless evidence. No? Maong kailangan yun na to take note or take into account the persons who have handled the evidence because improper or kung wala siya maayo nga na note kung kinsa jud ang nagunit ani, then the evidence may lose its value kasi baka na-contaminate na, no? Next is to notify headquarters of status. Notify the command of your office in order for them to be informed. You can notify them by calling or texting or maybe even in online chat, no? So especially today in these days, no, na technology is fast arising. Then request for assistance. Request notification of Office of Prosecutor's Representative only for legal questions. Do not allow a lawyer to get involved in the actual investigation. Their training limits them to provide advice on legal issues. So, also request the assistance of a medico-legal examiner. No? The presence of these personalities aid the investigation by using their expertise and not getting involved with the investigation. No, their sole purpose is only to provide information vital for the investigation. Next is protect the crime scene. To protect the crime scene, no, basic na kayo ni, napa ni sa CDI1. Cordon the area using rope or any items to block off the scene being contaminated by any unauthorized personnel. No, since ang isa ka crime scene daghan jud og makisyoso ana, daghang magtanaw. So then you must cordon the area to avoid unauthorized personnel from entering. Next, you must discharge unauthorized persons from the scene. Meaning unauthorized personnel within the scene must be removed instantly. No, pahawaon gyud na sila. And prelude anyone from touching the body or disturbing any pending evidence to avoid contamination of the evidence in the crime scene. And in dealing with the witnesses, note the name and address of the persons and obtain brief statements from these persons. And while waiting, no, these witnesses should be confined until the arrival of the investigator for more thorough interview. The witness must be isolated from each other to prevent destruction of evidence such as tire marks, footprints, and the like. No, because kapag ginayaan lang sila, no, na maglakad-lakad within the crime scene, then they will contaminate or destroy possible evidences, no? And next is process the crime scene. Be aware that there are search and seizure problems in this area. When in doubt, you may wish to contact the office of the prosecutor to obtain advice, no? So ang search and seizure, these are issues in investigation. So to keep guard of the crime scene, no, one can utilize artificial lighting. Artificial lighting, especially at night, to avoid intrusion or trespassing of unauthorized personnel that may obliterate the investigation and the evidence within the crime scene. Or you can stay and guard the crime scene for more thorough protection. Next is identification personnel or technical investigators. Identification personnel is note the time of the arrival and note when the weather condition, especially outside the crime scene, whether it is rainy, sunny, or so cloudy ba, because these are factors, no, that the affect the crime scene and potential evidence, no, because this is affects the moisture in the air, the humidity, no. That's why you must take note. Kay basin o ang mga especially biological evidence, mas madali na sila mabulok within hotter or more hot temperate environment. So that's why you must take note of these phenomena. Next is check perimeter of scene to guarantee that all scene is secured. This action is an assessment of the security of the crime scene to maintain the purity. So always check if the crime scene is well cordoned and free of unauthorized personnel, because this promotes security. Next is photograph the scene or photograph scene. Take color photographs of the scene from all angles. Start from the perimeter to the center load. So meaning, start from the outside going to the inside. Then take as much as possible photographs. No, it is always a rule, no, there is no limit in taking pictures in an investigation. Take as much as possible, the more the better. And include photographs of entrance and exit routes to the scene, no? Especially dito nakikita ang mga tool marks sa entrances and exit routes. Make sure that all potential locations relevant to the scene or photograph specifically significant, that all rooms at scene are photographed, since this may hold critical importance as the investigation develops. So, no, do not overlook every area, no. So dapat ma-check jud ang bawat parts or every quadrant sa imuhang crime scene in order to not skip any vital details that may aid the investigation. Next is photograph specific items of evidence such as cartridge cases, footprints, weapons, and the like. No, so mostly ang makita na ko ani sa mga palabas, close up or extreme close up photographs ang ginakuha aning mga gagmay na items, no, tapos butang bilugan or butangan og number. While taking photographs, use a ruler as a scale to illustrate size. So naani siya sa forensic photography na subject sa una, no, that a ruler is a must, no, to illustrate the size in the photograph. Idoo lang nimo ng ruler sa item na or evidence na i-photograph nimo to para mahimo lang siyang reference sa size, no, because it is already a photograph, then the size might be smaller or look larger in the photograph. To take overhead photographs of outdoor scenes. Overhead meaning mura og taas ba, including streets, intersections, which may be very useful in constructing scene constructing scale representation. You may use ladders, saka ka, or climb in tall vehicles, or in power towers, no? Mga power companies, mga kani sa Davao Light na mga poste ba? For this purpose, no? Just to take picture of an overhead photograph. So next is a videotape. Whenever possible, take a videotape recording. Take a videotape recording of every action, including collection of evidence. Scene is examined. The team as well as the interview and defendant and witness. Do this only if possible. No, so ang videotaping, no, this can only be done if possible lang jud, kay it is rare, no, na makita ang naga-video sa crime scene sa kung makita sa mga palabas. Mostly taken note within the kuan. Take note sila, ilang isulat ang process, di nila gina video. So next, photograph victim at scene. So again, no, before removing, no, or touching and the victim at the scene, kailangan jud picture na una. First is take a color photograph, no, of the deceased from all angles. While items are being removed from the body, such as identification and personal effects, this must also be photographed for documentation. So every action that you take towards the deceased's body, then it should be documented by photographing the process. Take close-up photographs of wounds and injuries. Take careful notice of the following. No, meaning this particular circumstances must be observed thoroughly when conducting these photographs. The position of the body, meaning whether if it is lying on the left, again on the right, or sitting, no, you must take note of the position of the body. The condition of the clothing must also be observed. So this may indicate factors that affect the crime. No, kung gisi-gisi iyang sinina, basin degi posposan to siya una bago siya gipatay. No, so the condition of his clothing or her clothing might give information about the crime. Also, the location of the substances of the deceased in his clothing, whether these items are adjacent, no, towards the victim or placed far away. No, ang kutsilyo unsa man, duol ba, dapit ba siya ang lawas or layo ba? Okay, kung duol ba sinday og suicide. Then survey the scene. You must take careful measures or measurements of the scene, assessing each room in the house. So again, no, from the previous discussion, no, to avoid overlooking the crime scene, the investigator must check every room, no. So again, you must take careful measurements of the crime scene, assessing each room in the house, no, because one of the reasons, no, kasi mahirap na bumalik sa scene without any warrant. For the law forbids it, no? So when arriving in the scene, do as much as possible. Kaya naa naman ka diha, buhatan na lang tanan na posible niyong mabuhat dra para mas maka-acquire ka og daghan na information from the moment that you have arrived. Kay kung imaw na buhaton sa imong sulod pagbalik pa, then daghan ng complications and mga legalities na kailangan i-follow, such as acquiring a warrant in order to enter the scene. Next is search of scene. So for the deceased, no, again, before removal of the body, one must check for physical evidence such as fibers, loose hairs, fingernails, and the like. No, kuhaon sa lawas ba, sample ana, mga buhok, kuko, or any physical evidence, no, within the victim's body. And also, you must examine the ground where the victim was lying down. Kaya nga no, after the removal of the victim's body, ang iyang gihigdaan na ay mga possible or potential evidence na atong mag-gather diha. And inspect this for additional physical evidence that may be visible after movement. No, so kung na-move na, basig dara pa din na manggawas na silang anay mga maggots dira, meaning dugay na din na siya namatay. No? And for the scene area, organize scene search by using search method. So naagihapon ni sa CDI1, no? These search methods are discussed, no, in the previous topics on specialized crime investigation, such as zone method or quadrant method, spiral method, grid method, strip method. So those are methods on how to search the crime scene. And during the search of the scene, there must be numerous members or participants that are searching the area. For each personnel are assigned a specific task. So, maugya po ni siya kung natunan sa una sa CDI1, no, na naay senior investigator, sketcher, tig measure, and tig collect sa evidence, and tig mark. Then, that's why, no, it is always a teamwork when there is always a teamwork in investigation, because every person is assigned a specific task. No, one must be a sketcher, one must be the collector of the potential evidence and mark evidence. So, during the search, mark and photograph locations of objects in search, such as latent fingerprints, footprints, tire marks, glass fragments, blood stains, and etc. No? When collecting evidence, do not overlook items such as room furniture, door, etc. that can be used to reconstruct crime scene in court. Then reserve collected evidence individually by packing them separately to avoid contamination. So, kaya naman po sa packaging of or proper handling of evidence na naano siya sa forensic tree, no, in order to avoid contamination or destruction of the value of the evidence, then they must be packed appropriately in separate bags or separate containers. And these evidences must also be packed separately in appropriate package containers, no, kung dapat na sa mga vials kana mga biodegradable na evidence, then they must be packed within glass vials, no. When the packaging or storage of this evidence must be separated from each other, no, as I've said again, to avoid contamination, one must utilize appropriate containers for specific evidences, such as vials or molded plastic containers for blood and seminal fluid, and paper bindle for fibers and hair, etc. During the submission of the collected potential evidence to the crime laboratory, so inana man jud ang SOP ana after the collection, then para ma-examine siya, ipadala siya sa crime laboratory. To be examined. And when arriving at the crime laboratory, then you must inform the laboratory personnel or kung kinsa man ang mag-examine anang mga na-collect nimo na items of potential evidence, you need to inform that laboratory personnel concerning the origin of the items and the test that they must perform to shed light to the investigation. Kay kung dili ka maghatag na information, then so i-perform nila tanan test ana, dugay kay sila mahuman. That's why you need to make a brief account to the crime laboratory about the you need to make a brief account to the crime laboratory about your initial investigation, or what is the theory of the crime, in order for them to do the most possible test results to acquire results, no? This process allows, no, kung mag-i-inform mo sila, no, that process of informing laboratory personnel will allow quick results and avoid unnecessary tests to be conducted by the crime laboratory that are useless for the evidence and investigation. Next is process defendant. Photograph defendant illustrating any injuries or lack thereof. Put on view his general appearance and clothing, hands, both sides, and the scars. Show the scar status and other distinct identifiable features. So, mo na sa ang mga mapansin, no, mga identifiable features. Para kung kirat ang mata, na tato nga dragon, tato nga piso, ulihipan. Then you must take photograph of these features. This allows easy identification, no? Called evidence that are next is take hold of any evidence that you are entitled to, such as pubic combing, mga sinuklayan nga volvets, pubic hair, no? So mo na sila mga physical evidence, no, nga entitled ka kuhaon. Any items that is in the clothing and could be lost. Next is obtain a warrant for blood and hair samples. So ngano kailangan mag-warrant, no? The question is, why do we need a warrant for blood samples and hair samples? Because no one is entitled to collect any body fluids from anybody, no? That is why you must first secure a warrant when acquiring a bodily fluid from different person. Next is autopsy processing. Autopsy processing, arrange through medical legal examiner the transportation of the victim to the morgue. So ang medical legal officer or medical legal examiner, siya ang in charge of the transportation of the body to the morgue. The investigator and medical legal examiner should be present during the autopsy. Both medical legal examiner and investigator are present during the autopsy in order for them to work together, no? Then, if possible, before autopsy, the fingers and palm print of the deceased should be taken into photograph, no? Because this may serve as a copy of its identity or pick up any evidence that was obtained during the autopsy. Examples are blood samples, sa pa ba, mga hair fibers, fingernail scrapings, bullets, and the like. Place items in separate containers. So this is a standard procedure to avoid contamination of the evidence. So mao jud ni siya ang gina-discuss during isa ni siya sa vital element in investigation, which is to avoid the contamination of evidence. Okay, unsa na lang pag kuan sa result ani or sa conclusion kung wala tay mga kuan bugat na ebidensya kay na contaminate na, mawala na iyang value. The evidence will be destroyed, no, in other kung sa daling istorya pa. And use appropriate containers. Next is investigative personnel. Investigative personnel obtain summary of information from the first responder officer at scene. So basically, no, the first responder will provide his primary assessment as he arrived at the scene. Check in security, and take steps needed to correct errors or omissions, if any. Meaning, as an investigator, you must check if the area or the scene is properly cordoned to avoid contamination of the scene, and inspect any possible impurities and maintain clarity. So that's why you must check if the area is properly cordoned, no, because this may result to impurities. Review all actions of officer of the scene. This is a precaution taken in order to not overlook the scene or miss any details that is vital in the investigation. Commence investigation from the beginning. No, meaning start from the beginning. No, then determine the identity of the deceased through identification from relatives or witnesses. No. Next is establish a casebook. So, what is a casebook? Copies of casebook. Establish a casebook to include the following: follow-up report, evidence report, medical report, witness statements, defendant's statements, background on defendant, background of deceased, evidence logbook, book of photograph. The casebook will serve as a summary of the investigation. So meaning sa casebook, dali naka-contain tanan mga evidence report, medical report, and other reports made through the course of investigation. No? The principal investigator and prosecutor's office must acquire a copy of this casebook. No? And keep casebook currently by distributing new reports. So meaning, casebook must be always updated, no? Kung may maabot na report, then dungag na pod and i-distribute na pod nato sa prosecutor's office ug sa investigator. No, this is to allow to keep the line of communication open to investigators, to investigators, other law enforcement, and prosecutor's office. Then obtain detailed statements from defendant and witness. No? For the defendant, advise him or her of the Miranda rights. So, Miranda rights, no, to inform the detained or the defendant of his rights. have the defendant initial or sign, write cards, or get verbal acknowledgement for the same that the right were understood and clear. Videotape or record the defendant's statements. So, pwede mo siya i-record. Pero, it is your choice to inform the defendant whether you have recorded his statement or not. No, this serves the purpose that sometimes when the defendant is informed, no, that his statement is being recorded, then he will provide an impure or make up statement, no, kay iyang ginawa gi-record na ba ang iyang istorya. So kung pausabon siya og istorya, di kabalo na jud siya unsa tong gi-record, masakpan ang iyang mga bakak nga giistorya. So kung iingon nimo nga wala gi-record, then posible pa nga masakpan nimo ang mga bakak niya sa follow-up questioning na imong buhaton. Then for witnesses, on the other hand, use your discretion as to document the conversation or not. As a rule, record conversation with reluctant witnesses. Established movements of deceased prior to deaths determine the following. So next na. Establish the movements of the deceased prior to the death determine. Death to determine. Time last seen. So oras siya last nakitaan. Kinsay kauban, with whom, asa, location, and unsa ilahang ginabuhat. Then, scrutinize the deceased's background including the following: mga kaparentihan, friends, employment, possible illegal activities, criminal record, finances, possible romantic involvements, possible use of narcotics, possible gang involvement. So, the question is, why do we need to assess the background of the deceased? Because this information, no, may provide facts that are vital to the information, since these are factors that affect the human being. Kung for example, no, nalambigit siya sa droga, di basin og nakabatal siya kwarta, maong namatay siya. Or kung sa finances, basin og depressed, nahot ng kwarta, pagkamatay. And gang involvements, maong napatay na siya tungod sa mga kuan, gang wars, mga beef sa between gangs. So, no, these are factors that affect the investigation. That's why they must be checked into. Next is the motive. Motive, consider the deceased's background, views, scene information, proper evidence indicating motive, such as view scene information for evidence indicating motive, such as sex, money, or property. No, theft of money or property, narcotics, and mental derangement. Buang mental derangement, buangon ba? Determine the actions of the defendant after homicide. So first, sa motive, no? Again, kailangan na ito ma-determine ang background sa defendant para ato ang ma-assess nga nung sa mga possibilities why this particular person have committed this action. Mental derangement, pasinubuang day. Narcotics, basig nalulong sa droga, wala sa tamang pag-iisip. Then, it is very possible, no, that this person will become aggressive and hurt, or worst cases, kill someone. Determine the actions of the defendant after homicide. You may be required to cover period of days, weeks, or months before the incident, depending on the motive of on the motive and other circumstances. Next is pay attention to any unusual actions of the defendant, trips and absences from work, home, or etc. No, so inanap yun na nakasala, no, likay-likay sa mga kuan, mao basig absent sa trabaho, naglakaw na sa laing lugar. So those actions must be taken into observation. So next is determine the actions. This is before dapat ni before the homicide. Next is determine the actions of the defendant after the homicide. No, mga lakaw niya, flight, destruction or concealment of clothing, weapon used, and vehicles, including cleaning of the same to remove blood stains. No, this is a destruction of evidence na iyang ginabuhat kay after the homicide na. Next is the practical tips. Call upon experienced investigators to provide assistance and insight. So, siyempre, advice from mga predecessors or mga colleagues that are very proficient or excellent in this field. Acquiring advice from this person, no, can provide great insights of the investigation. Next is tips. Next is question all concerned thoroughly. So kung kinsa man ang mga concerned family members and ang mga witnesses or mga kauban sa balay, be careful in questioning witnesses. Some of them may be involved in the crime either as principal, accomplices, or accessory. No, so maong napoy sketch na ginatawag for questioning, guide for questioning. No, mao sad na ginalahi ang mga witnesses when questioning. Dili sila sabay-sabay sa isa ka kwarto, they are isolated from each other, no, para malikayan ang deception, no. Kasi ikaw ra giila di ay sa mga witnesses kay kuan sila, participant sila sa criminal activity, whether principals, accomplices, or accessory. Do not reveal critical information carelessly to witnesses, no. It may get back to the defense and you may end up with what you have divulged to the witness instead of what he or she actually knows about the incident, no. So kung magpataka lang ka og hatag og information sa witnesses, then they may use it against you. Separate witnesses. Then witnesses shall be isolated from each other, no, to prevent conversation about, no, sig magsabot-sabot sila ba, mao ni ato ang statement dito pre para dito masakpan. Confer and cooperate with the other police officers, no. Unity is the key. Be courteous and tactful. Give regular attention to dissemination and pertinent information. Do not divulge valuable information to press or unauthorized persons. So dili dahil nimo i-give in ang mga informations na imong na-gather sa imong investigation, no, kay kung imo ni siyang ihatag sa press, then it will divulge the valuable information, and basin og ma-aware na day ang suspect ang tinuod na suspect sa imong mga nahibalaan, di mas daan na siya idea kung unsa yan dapat buhaton, no. Pareha sa katong hostage taking sa bus. Next is report writing. Report writing. But of the case must be reported, no investigation, regardless of how competently undertaken, is complete unless accurate, put into writing. So, tanan, no, must be put into writing. Reports are the investigator's channels of communication. So, these reports, no, will serve as the channel of communication kay naa man gud nakasulat ang mga ilahang mga na-discover or mga na kuan sa crime scene ba, mga processes na ilang gipang buhat. That's why other investigators reading another investigators report, then dala na mag-convey ang information nga iyahang na-gather. Di na kailangan mag-istorya, no? Katunan lang report. The report says it all. Kumbaga, contents of the report must include, no, the summary of which a brief, concise synopsis of operative cases or case facts at beginning of report. This puts case in narrative form to enable the reader to understand picture before examining balance of report. For details, witnesses, statements, and summary should not contain verbatim recital of witnesses statements. This allows readers, no, to easily navigate through the report and comprehend the report instantly. So para, no, dali masabtan ba, mao na sa atong inabutan diya na ay murag summary, concise synopsis, no, mao na siya ang mura og summary na sa imuhang report. List of evidence, a catalog of items seized using consecutive number for each individual items. Specify the following: unsa, asa gikan, asa, seized, unsa gikuha ba, seized, where stored, asa gitago, asa tigom, action taken to indicate if the item was given to crime lab personnel for testing, and if so, to whom. No, that again, no, sa start sa to ang video reporting, it is discussed, no, that in crime laboratory still it is it should be taken into account, no, the chain of custody in when examining the evidence, no, basig ilahan na din ng kuanon sabon. Next, action needed. Identify the processing remaining to be undertaken, such as latent, print, laboratory testing, and like. List of witnesses with brief statements of what their testimony pertains to in connection with the case. So, witness statements do not include, no, your opinion concerning the value of the case and irrelevant material. So, that is the end of chapter 6. No? Now, let us start chapter 7. Chapter 7, no, so we are done discussing the topics of chapter 6, which is homicide investigation checklist. Now let us proceed to chapter 7, police investigative report writing. So kung mag-stop ko, no, wala mo gud ako ang transcript. So now let us begin chapter 7. So as we begin chapter 7, no, which is police investigative report writing, let us first discuss what is a report. A report is defined as a story of action performed by men. In an investigative report writing, a police report is a chronological or step-by-step account of an incident that took place at a given time. A police report is a narration of facts discovered in the course of an investigation, which serves as permanent written records for present and future use. So basically, no, a report is an account of a phenomena or happening in written form, audio form, or video form. but generally, reports refer to any documentation recorded on a departmental form or other approved medium and maintained as a permanent record. So, ang report, it serves the purpose to become a record, no, official record. So, also, reports have numerous uses and purposes. Police reports are written at the scene of many events and as a result, used for a wide variety of reasons. Una, for criminal investigations, newspapers and media reference materials, no? Reference materials, statistical data for crime analysis, documentation, officer evaluation, statistical reporting. So these are the reasons why police reports is very important. For criminal investigation, it serves as a record of the process of the crime scene and the hypothesis and the theory and the conclusion of the crime, no? And the newspaper and media, this serves the purpose to give information to the public of who or of what are the current happenings within their community. Reference material and statistical data, no, for crime analysis are used for future researches or analytical documents. Documentation serves as a record or an account. No, so those are the only few reasons why these uses and purposes of police report are made. So next, a report, no? Police report have two general types, basic and investigative type. So let us discuss. First is the basic or informal report. This deals with the ordinary amount, miscellaneous, usual or memorandum, and the like. Basic report usually contains letterhead of the organization, the person or office to whom it is addressed, text proper, and the name of the writer or source of the report. So basically, no, informal report refers to reports that provide information towards the public or towards a particular organization or a group of people, whereas investigative or formal report covers an exact and exhaustive narration of facts, which can be classified into three types. No, so ang investigative or formal report, no, classify siya into three types. First is the initial report or advance account regarding a new case assigned one investigator. This contains information from initial investigation. So mo ni siya ang kasagaran madungog sa news, no, initial report. Unsa ba ang initial report? Next is progress. No? Next is progress or follow-up report. It contains the result of the following follow-up investigation. So, this is a gauge or yardstick for the detective's efficiency. This report contains the findings of the follow-up investigation. The third one, no, is the final or closing report. These are comprehensive narration of facts and details based on a thorough inquiry of the case by detective who initially started the investigation, covering all the facts and circumstances surrounding the case. In other words, no, this is a conclusion that creates a clear picture of the crime committed in the minds of the readers. For prosecutor and judicial actions, mas dali nila na masabtan, no, or this report is for them to analyze the final and closing report. This report contains information whether the case is solved and considered closed. Signify that the offender has been arrested, the evidence against him is complete to warrant prosecution, and witnesses are located to testify for the trial. So, those particular items are comprised within the closing or final report. Qualities. No? So, in creating a report, it should also be good in order for the reader to easily comprehend the information. There are qualities that must be observed for a report to be considered as a good report. Accuracy, brevity, and clarity. So, ang accuracy, a good quality report is precise, meaning the fake news, or every detail and information in the report are factual and establish the body of the crime. Period. Since this is the duty of an investigator, mao man yung trabaho sa investigator, which is a fact finder. Next is brevity. It refers to conciseness of expression. This refers to the use of correct words that convey the best meaning to express the notion. Di na pataason ba? Conciseness relates to the elimination of unnecessary words. Since a police report usually contains only 12 to 15 words in a sentence, meaning conciseness or brevity in the report is very helpful in maintaining this number of words in a sentence in a police report. Kaya kung taas na kayo ang police report, kasi may ganahan mo basa na So next is clarity. Clarity means plain, precision, and clearness. This is the use of plain words, in short, words that are not sugar-coated to allow easy understanding. Di na ta magamit og mga terminology or mga jargons that ang reader kay dili nila masabtan. And also, in creating a report, it should also be good in order for the readers to easily comprehend the information. There are qualities that must be observed for a report to be considered as a good report. Again, in creating good police report, the following must be considered. The report must be factual, meaning there is no lacking details, and the report must be complete. The report should be specific, meaning police reports should be definite, detailed, and particular, or in short, naka-narrate jud bawat happening ba, or every specific action must be noted. The report should be fair and objective. Fair and objective meaning it is not affected by the writer or the author's own prejudice and biases and own opinion. And objective meaning it is not affected by your own opinion. It is not subjective. You write the report as it is. The report should be up to date. Kaya nga naman sad ka magbuhat og report nga naitabo pa sa 19 kupong-kupong. So it should be up to date. Because kung dugay na kayo then unsa man pa niyo pagkukuda nga kasi wala na to ng mga tao ang involved or concerned na report. Types of report writing. So there are also types of report writing. The following are investigative report, progress report, spot report or special report, beat, inspection report, situation report, formal report, arrest report, clearance report, crime report, daily activity report, evidence report, and incident report. So let us break these types of report writing one by one. Investigative report. Now this contains the process of investigation or the happenings in the investigation. No, mo na siya ang contents within that report. Progress report. Progress report is a report that contains current situation or progress or level of goal or aim. Meaning, kung unsa na ang dagan sa ato ang goal ba, na achieve na ba nato na, unsa na yung progreso. Spot report are done within 24 hours. No? So, ang spot report done after an incident took place in a certain area, then it should be submitted within 24 hours. Beat inspection or after patrol report practiced with written communication in station level. So, progress report level of the done within 24 hours. So, the basis of commanders to know. Next is situation report. Ang situation report is done on a basis on a need basis. The commander has to know the actual situation of a particular incident which can be of public interest. So, meaning this is a report of circumstances happening. What is the current situation of the personnel or within the community. Next is formal report. This usually contains the following: introduction, summary, body, conclusion, and recommendation. So we can compare formal report with essays, no? Introduction, summary, body. Next is arrest report. They are used to document the events that transpired the apprehension of a person or in the police custody. Now, these reports are the accounts from police officers who arrested the person. So, this is an account on the procedure, how they arrested the person. Next is clearance report, are used to keep a record of the disposition of particular criminal case. So, whether this contains information of the person, whether he or she is cleared of his or her criminal case. Next is crime report, also known as fact sheets. Fact sheets, which include suspect's description, corpus delicti or the body of crime, results of preliminary investigation, and modus operandi. Next is daily activity report, a typical log which includes operation, location, amount of time spent, and brief disposition. So meaning daily activity report is a summary of what happened throughout the day. The activity of the day must be made into a report. So sa buntag, nag-feeding program nani na oras nag-feeding program from 6 to 8 feeding program. Then 8 to 12 parlor games. Next is evidence report. Evidence report, this refers to documentation of collection and preservation of evidence, as well as the participants in the chain of custody of the evidence. This report refers to the account during the process of gathering of evidence and the storage and the personnel have handled or the chain of custody of the evidence collected. And lastly, incident report. This refers to an account on an event not amounting to crimes but caught the attention of police assigned in the particular jurisdiction, such as calls for service, meaning no, these are not criminal reports. Kani sila nga mga report are only events that caught the attention of our law enforcement agents. These events are not majorly endangering the lives of the citizen, but it may create suspicion. That's why it caught the attention of our law enforcement agents. So next are types of issuance. The following are circulars, general circulars, memorandum circulars, office orders, special orders, letter directives, letter orders, and standard operating procedure or SOP. So circulars or administrative issuance, which are orders and standard operating procedure. Administrative issuance, which are admin instruction, which are directory, advisory, or informative in nature, more or less permanent in duration. So kaning mga circulars mura japonig mga memorandum no about sa info. Gihapon ni siya para ma-inform lang ang public about sa update. However, more or less no, ang duration niya is permanent. And also it is mo na siya ginatawag nga informative in nature. Example ano niya no kay general circulars. Example ano niya no kay ang pag-change o kuan officer in charge. It is a administrative issuance. Nag-ilis execute tayo butang kuan circular circular number 1 no, nag-ilis na og kuan officer or officer in charge sa kanina department. So next is general circulars. General circulars, this contains administrative instructions which are advisory, informative in nature, and more or less general in application and permanent in duration. So kung ano siya, permanent na. Example, firearms ban or gun ban. There's Davao City. Circular number 0012. Gun ban, no? So bawal na magdala og firearms in public places. Bisan pa og nakay lisensya na. No? And random circulars, memorandum circulars, it deals with the subjects such as explanation of certain rules and regulation which are complied with the execution of subordinates. So memorandum, ang information naman po na iyang gina-convey kay ang mga newly implemented na mga rules and regulations. Next is office circulars. This pertain to communication informing the majority in a particular decorative or office only, not intended for those in the field. So from the word itself, office. So intended for office only, not for men in the field. Next is office orders. Office orders, no? Kaya mura lang po na siya og office circulars. However, office orders are purely intentional instructions which are regulatory in nature, mandatory in character, and requiring definite compliance by personnel. So office orders are mandatory directive that the office staff must follow. Next is special orders. This refers to the communication which are directives affecting the status of an individual. An example is an appointment, transfer, promotion, relief from duty, separation, and leave of absence, meaning this is an information of the status of the individual. So next is letter directives. What is a letter directive? Letter directives contain routine directives by which subordinates or office are given instructions. These are advice or information. So naa siya lifetime for 2 years, no? Ang validity niya, ang letter directives is only valid for 2 years. Next is a letter order. Kung naay office circulars and office orders, ang letter naman, letter directives o letter orders. It pertains to instruction sent in form of a letter to persons concerned. So, dili na siya i-post sa bulletin board or kuan. These are personally sent towards those who are involved or concerned with this letter. No? It may contain na na-assign na ka sa bagong lugar or ibalhin ka aning adlaw na ba. This is more specific or this is not in general, no? Kuan lang yun siya. Letter na ginahatag towards person who are only concerned with this information. Next is Standard Operating Procedure or SOP. It is a set of instructions regarding the procedures should be followed on a regular basis, desired by the chief of the director. So in different organizations, there is always a standard operating procedure. In every situation, they must follow. The SOP must be followed by every member of the organization. Next, let us proceed to police blotter. So refers to record of daily events occurring with the area of responsibility, territory, jurisdiction of a given police command unit. So that is what is a police blotter is. Then every PNP operating unit shall secure and maintain official police blotter where all types of operational and undercover dispatches or be recorded containing the 5 W's and 1 H. So unsa maning 5 W's and 1 H? This refers to whom or who, what, where, when, and why. Ang H, how. Police blotter must be written also in a prescribed size of 12 by 16 inches na libro, and the front cover shall bear the name of the police force of the and specific district and station together with the designation of the particular police unit or substation, the volume or book number, the series, and the period covered. So why do we need na sulatan kay siyempre dagan man og police blotters og naipangitaon way back na mga years. Then basihan lang nimo tong cover page para dali makita kung naabad ra within that period ba nahitabo to na blotter. So now let us discuss the contents of entry of a police blotter. So the entry in the police blotter should answer the following: who, what, why, where, when, how, along with the disposition of the case. So the 5 W's and 1 H is the basic questions to be asked in order to obtain a full loaded information. In answering the cardinals of question in the case disposition or such material details pertaining to the event include the names of the suspects, the victims, the witnesses, if any, the nature of the offense or the action, the possible motive, the place, where it took place, and the date, including the time of the occurrence, significant circumstances surrounding the case, the identity of the officer to whom the information was given, no, and it is, no, so in short, ang police blotter is very detailed up to sa iyahang time, no. Dapat ma-record jud na siya kung kinsay nakadawat sa tawag or sa information, no, kinsay officer na to ang nagsulat ani. That is what is a police blotter is. Then also, following transactions or incidents are entered in the police blotter: violations of ordinances and law reported or discovered, all calls in which any member of the PNP is dispatched or takes official action, all firearms or fire alarm reports and information received by the station, movements of detention of prisoners which corresponding notations on the authority for such movements, vehicular and other types of incidents. So those are the contents of the police blotter, no, those are the entries. So now we are up to the last topic of chapter 7. Woo! Procedure in making the entries. All entries in the police blotter shall be handwritten in a clear, concise, and simple manner. So, handwritten siya, no? Dili siya i-type. Next, it should be concise. Meaning, sakto ba? Sakto. Precise. All facts or all details must be factual and simple in a manner kay para dali lang masabtan without using any jargons or terminologies, no, that may create confusion. Only facts, not opinions, are entered into the blotter. As I have said, no erasures shall be made in the entries. So yung, no, the author or the writer must be very careful in writing a blotter report. A pen with lack of blue ink is used in making entries. Black na siya, no, black or blue ink. So bawal ang red, purple, may mga glitters nga ball pen, bawal na siya. Falsification in the blotter or any attempts to surpass any information therein is criminally and administratively punishable. So, kung imuhan ng mangati ka sa blotter ba, na kay criminal o administrative liability, then you are to be punished if you have proven guilty by that action. No, so be careful. The entries must be legibly written in a long hand and consecutively numbered. No, so long hand tapos naka consecutively numbered para di mawala ang page ang magkasunod-sunod. The entries must be, or every page of the blotter shall be uninterruptedly and chronologically filled up. No? Sunod-sunod. Any development of the case to be reflected in the blotter should be a new entry at the time and the day it was reported. No? So the details of the time or when it was created is very crucial in creating the entry of a blotter. Any development of the case to be reflected in the blotter should be new entry at the time and the day it was reported. So mali dito, no? Ang pasabot day ana niya kung na updates about sa case or sa blatter na gisulat nimo within the day or within, no, it must be written. So imo siyang i-revise kung naay mga updates or imuhang i-add ang information, no? So next, in every shift of duty, in every shift, the duty sergeant under the supervision of the duty officer or complete desk officer shall make the actual entries in the blotter, and at the end of his tour duty they shall sign the blotter. So ang signature, no, ang purpose ani signature para make sure na sila jud ang nagbuhat ang nga blotter. Kay kung nana sa mga complications, then kung kinsa sign ang naa dito, siya ang responsible for that mistake, no? So now we are done discussing, no, the topics from both chapter 6 and 7. So I really hope, no, that you have learned or you have understood my report po, sir. Thank you for watching and listening po, sir. God bless and stay safe.